The left will never stop their agenda to take over America. You are their enemy, and they will not negotiate. Prepare yourselves. Welcome to the Blue Shark Show with your host, Mike Lang.
Here today with trans issues, and we have several of them. Before we get started, John's in the studio today. John, Shirley, how you doing?
I'm doing good, Mike. It's still summer outside. My thermometer still shows like 105 plus every day. Please, can we get a break?
No kidding. Yeah. And we also have Nate Criswell in the studio. How you doing, Nate?
Great, Mike. Glad to be here. And just for the record, I don't have any trans issues. I am not trans, don't have any desire to be trans.
So
no
you're
trans
solid.
Issues. Solid.
You're solid. But we can sure talk about it, right?
Yeah, we'll talk about it. It'll be fun.
Well, good. Well, let's get right into it. And before we kind of get into trans stuff, and this kind of touches a little bit on it, let's look at Elizabeth Warren and what she's saying about pregnancy resource center clinics. And it's just, it's part of the left, part of what they do. And it goes back to, the left is just surprised that people don't want to kill babies like them. So let's look at her video.
In Massachusetts right now, those crisis pregnancy centers that are there to fool people who are looking for pregnancy termination help outnumber true abortion clinics by 3 to 1. We need to shut them down here in Massachusetts, and we need to shut them down all around the country. You should not be able to torture a pregnant person like that.
So here's Elizabeth Warren wanting to shut down the pregnancy clinics, the crisis pregnancy clinic, because there's not enough abortion clinics for, if you got that, persons that want an abortion.
Well, I think this really signifies how the narrative is now shifted and the paradigm has shifted to where the left used to, it was their MO to defend the abortion clinics. Now they have to try to go after these crisis pregnancy centers, which are really great resources.
Yes, they're great resources, and they've been, very active to help pregnant women, actually help pregnant women for the last 30 or 40 years, or really since Roe came around. I find I have a problem with this because it sounds like to me, the left likes to point to the right and say, oh, they use these dog whistles, to activate their dangerous base. Well, I look at this and I see this as a literal dog whistle, calling out and saying, we need to shut these places down. They outnumber abortion clinics. It wasn't but 2 weeks ago or so when it came out that, a university put out the addresses and locations of every crisis pregnancy center in the country. So when you put these two things together, it doesn't take a whole jump to see that they're pushing for, in my opinion, violence.
They
on
are
crisis
evil.
Pregnancy centers.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's evil. And when she says 3 to 1, it's, she's taken score of killing baby clinics to clinics that want to help mothers and their babies. And,
fathers, when we were pregnant with my first child, I was unmarried at the time, and we go to one of those clinics. It was part of the deal, and they gave a little spiel, and they talked about options, and they showed a couple videos and said, hey, if y'all need anything as far as, diapers, formula, we're here to help. Those clinics are actually really good at saving lives and keeping people from getting abortions. And unlike Senator Warren, the fake Indian, said, they are not torture clinics. Nothing in there was torturous. It was a pleasant experience.
Well, heaven forbid, you always want to have compassion for these pregnant women, but Warren wants to say, how dare they fool these poor pregnant women in torturing them because they can't find an abortion? So it's torture for these women because they have to, I guess, search through the crisis pregnancy centers that'll actually help them to find the place where they'll kill their baby. But it's not torture, to dismember a baby in the womb.
Or out of the womb. We were just a few years ago fighting partial birth abortions in a lot of these states. Not so much anymore.
And now because of Roe v. Wade, everything comes back to the states, and they think they're losing all their power, which, they're losing the opportunity to kill babies on a national level, and now they have to fight it on a state level. And you notice she said Massachusetts and the rest of the country, because now that Roe v. Wade's coming back, she's, all the other states are involved now for all these Democrats.
Well, and again, the news media fails at their basic task. She's calling for the shutting down of private businesses without cause. So a logical response to that would, from a reporter, should have been, well, Senator Warren, how do you propose we shut these places down? Give us an idea. Because I'm saying it's authoritarianism. You know, she doesn't think in terms of you know, opening your own company and owning your own piece of property and, you know, commerce. She doesn't think in those terms. She thinks in terms of, I don't like that. We're going to use government power. We're going to shut you down. So the question should have been, Elizabeth, tell us about shutting down those crisis pregnancy centers. How exactly do you see that in legislation going forward? But they didn't ask that question.
Well, like you said, it's totally authoritarian. That's the only way that you could accomplish that in a supposed free market, free enterprise system we have here in the U.S.
And you're dealing with the mainstream media, so those questions will not be asked.
A reasonable person takes what she said and can parse it out pretty quickly. Unless you are absolutely insane and are unsure what a woman is, then you can look at what she said and go, you know what? That doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't. And then, you know, we move from Elizabeth Warren and we go to Senator Josh Hawley, and they're having a Senate hearing, and this Berkeley law professor comes in. I believe her name is Kira Bridges. And now she's a professor at Berkeley. She teaches students. And the line of questioning that goes on with this, you know, it's more that transphobic. I guess transphobic is now the new racist, you're racist kind of deal. If you stand up for biblical principles, if you stand up for, I know what a man is, I know what a woman is, I know their definitions. But man, I tell you what, if you go against what people like this Berkeley professor says, you're transphobic. And not only are you transphobic, you're inciting violence.
Well, because the left sees speech as violence. You know, it's on the right. If someone says something we don't like to hear, we will use an argument against them. But to the left, if you say something I don't want to listen to or I don't like the opinion, they consider that akin to violence. That's how they justify having how Antifa justifies, you know, a violent response to normal free speech activities. And that's also how the left gives Antifa, the legitimate left. That's what they do to Antifa. They say, you know, well, that's violence. Them being out there, that's a violent confrontation. They forced us to respond violently. That's their defense. So this is part of their program. Part of their program, just
programming,
programming. Yeah. That's exactly right.
Programming from Berkeley. You know, decades ago, Berkeley was the capital of free speech. You know, during the '60s and '70s, from what I understand, anyway, a little bit before my time. But for this to be coming from a professor from Berkeley, it shows you how far our collegiate and university system has fallen in favor of communism, authoritarianism, one world order, whatever you want to call it. It's all coming from the same place.
Just look at how smug this professor is, and let's show the clip of the exchange between Senator Hawley and the professor.
Professor Bridges, you said several times, you've used a phrase, I want to make sure I understand what you mean by it. You've referred to people with a capacity for pregnancy. Would that be women?
Many women, cis women, have the capacity for pregnancy. Many cis women do not have the capacity for pregnancy. There are also trans men who are capable of pregnancy, as well as non-binary people who are capable of pregnancy.
So this isn't really a women's rights issue.
We can recognize that this impacts women while also recognizing that it impacts other groups. Those things are not mutually exclusive, Senator Hawley.
Oh, so your view is that the core of this right then is about what?
So I want to recognize that your line of questioning is transphobic, and it opens up trans people to violence by not recognizing them.
Wow, you're saying that I'm opening up people to violence by asking whether or not women are the folks who can have pregnancies?
So I want to note that 1 out of 5 transgender persons have attempted suicide. So I think it's important
because of my line of questioning? So we can't talk about it?
Because denying that trans people exist and pretending not to know that they exist.
I'm denying that trans people exist by asking you if you're talking about women having pregnancies?
Do you believe that men can get pregnant?
No, I don't think women can get pregnant.
So you are denying that trans people exist?
And that leads to violence? Is this how you run your classroom? Are students allowed to question you?
Absolutely.
Or are they also treated like this? Where
No,
they're told that they're opening up people to violence?
We have a good time in my class. You should join.
Oh, I bet.
You might learn a lot.
Wow, I would learn a lot. I've learned a lot just in this exchange.
Absolutely.
So here you have Professor Bridges. Are you? Do you believe that a man can't get pregnant?
Typical leftist.
Hell yeah, a man can't get pregnant. I mean, where is she coming from? And now he's transphobic, and I'm transphobic, I guess, in her definition, because, I say men can't get pregnant. But here's that, pathetic left Marxist, you got to scream violence. When I say that it's time, folks, for the conservatives, you don't negotiate. They're not negotiating whatsoever. There's no more negotiation. We step up there. You stand up for your values. Enough of people like this. And if you send your kids to this school and this classroom and this professor, you're doing your kids a total disservice.
Well, and unfortunately, yes, that school, that professor and all that, but this happens in so many universities. At Colorado State University, when I was applying to go there, they had us write an essay like, how are you a global citizen? They want to take away American identity. They want to take away American culture, postmodernism to the max, all that stuff you'd hear about. The Frankfurt School, where postmodernism started, has infiltrated the U.S. to a massive degree, with the universities now public ed. But I can't believe that the Senate disgraced themselves by having this, supposed professor come in and say, well, yeah, men can get pregnant. Oh, you're inciting violence by asking me questions. That's pathetic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We have to stop buying in to the other side's insanity. They want to set up some fake woke construct and expect the serious people of this world to take them seriously. And as the serious people of this world, we just need to stop and say, no, we're not going to take you seriously. When someone posits to me that a man can get pregnant, you've excused yourself from being taken serious about anything at that point.
Oh, follow the science, right? Oh, follow the science. Yeah.
Well, she
except the chromosomes, just ignore those.
Ignore those.
She wants to talk about, not being mutually exclusive. I'm sorry, but when you're born a biological male, you're born with biological male parts, it absolutely 100% and will always and ever has excluded you from becoming pregnant. And this clown up here talking to a U.S. senator and him expected to take her seriously, that in and of itself offends me.
Well, and they're having a conversation. He's trying to have a conversation, but it's the conversation part of you better not disagree with me or you're transphobic.
You saw her try to hang the trans suicide rates, which are caused by not senators asking questions. I feel really sorry for the trans people, and I pray for those people that they, get their issues worked out. But she tried to hang the immense number of trans people that commit suicide around that senator's neck by simply questioning what she was saying.
When the reality is, in the same statistics that show such a high percentage of suicides among trans people, guess what? After surgery, the suicide rate is almost exactly the same. So what are we buying ourselves other than mutilating a bunch of people in the name of science?
And the suicide rate comes more from the unnatural aspect of it and the mind control games of it. And now I think the suicide rate's probably going to go up because you have people like this professor that are going to screw with the kids. And I still call them kids. They're in college. And they're going to, it's just like kids in grade school, elementary school, high school, all the independent school districts across the United States are facing issues just like this. And it's going to trickle down if it's not there already. So the people that are conservative, the parents, the grandparents need to step up and put an end to this.
And parents, if you think that sending your student to a conservative university that has a historically conservative bent to it, don't kid yourself. The same professors that are at Berkeley and the same shades are at all your conservative universities, your Louisiana States, your Texas A&M University,
even your junior college.
Absolutely, the entire education sphere has been infected with this mind virus. So you got to be real careful wherever you send your students and spend your hard-earned money, that they're going to be indoctrinated if you don't stay on top of it.
A lot of the kids, it's like they feel cool if they come out as trans or whatever. So these kids are buying into it because they want that acceptance. They crave that
Attention.
affirmation, that attention
at a younger age.
at a younger age. And then at the local level, you have ISDs that are out there saying, hey, we're going to devote resources to making sure that our trans students, one, we don't tell their parents, and two, we can start to help them get gender affirming services. And that is BS.
So as a professor, this lady, Miss Bridges, and I call her lady because I guess she is a lady.
Hang on, did you just assume
woman.
her gender?
I did, and she's a woman. But at first, I guess I'm transphobic because, that's what I'm assuming is that she's a woman and the senator's a man and you go on. But do you think the conversation that she had with the senator and the way she spouted off and the way she went off on him and went straight true transphobic, what do you think she's going to do in her classroom? Do you think she's going to be worse in her classroom than she was there with the kids or better?
I would say probably worse. And, the other angle of that is what was her motivation for doing that? Is she looking for a viral clip? Is she planning to run for office? Does she want to become a media personality? That's kind of the lens I look at that through, is why would you talk like that to a senator who has you in there for an official hearing?
She was obviously trying to intimidate him and make him backpedal on the stage. And obviously she doesn't know Josh Hawley very well, because I knew he was never going to back down when she started getting in his face. But of course, if she's going to act indignant and try to back down a U.S. senator, which granted she's a citizen and has every right to speak to a senator,
exactly.
But if she's going to take that attitude with a sitting U.S. senator, what's she going to say to a 19-year-old sitting in her class? She's going to tell them to sit down, shut up, and you're going to espouse and repeat back to me exactly what I'm telling you.
Or you don't get your grade.
Right.
And that's how they play that game, too. Make no mistake about it. If you have a raging leftist as a professor and you get an assignment, if you regurgitate what they say, you'll get flying colors. You'll pass with straight A's, top 10% of the class. But if you question any of it in any way, shape, or form, they'll try to flunk you.
The smackdown, the liberal smackdown. and that leads us right into, our next trans issue, I guess you can call it. And it is a smackdown, but it started out good. And we have, singer Macy Gray. Don't know if you guys know Macy Gray or listen to her at all.
I didn't know she was still relevant.
I didn't know who she was.
Well, I guess she's relevant. I mean, she's in the news right now, right? Yeah. So she's on the Piers Morgan show and answering questions about, what is a woman. Well, let's look at the first clip.
And I will say this, and everybody's going to hate me, but as a woman, just because you go change your parts doesn't make you a woman.
Right.
Sorry.
And, she goes, hey, as a woman, just because you go changing your parts doesn't make you, a woman. And, Pierce is like, right. So, they were like, hey, I might get hated for this, but this is how I feel, right?
Yeah.
I think it's refreshing to see a powerful, smart black woman speak her mind and have an opinion and dare for 1 second to have an opinion that might be against the loony left.
That's right. What's cool about this situation is rather unique in that we can highlight a divide within the radical left, because you've got radical feminists, right? But some of them understand basic biology and say that, hey, just because you cross-dress doesn't mean you understand what it means to be a woman. Doesn't mean you understand how women are treated in society, how, dealing with sexist stuff or whatever. And that group is hated by the other members of the left, and they call them TERFs. They use it as a slang, TERF, trans-exclusive radical feminists. And more of those TERFs, because of issues like this, are coming over to the Republican side.
When she was on the show, she spoke up, and that's how she felt. You could tell by her expression, you could tell by her body language, you can tell that was her real feelings and how she felt.
And it was an unplanned response.
Exactly. So that, if you caught it off guard, just whatever. So that's her being original. Well, after she says this, because of the leftist media and what we're saying, the leftist Marcus, here goes 4 days. Didn't even take 4 days. And she's on NBC. Let's take a look at 4 days later.
wave of backlash that
Right.
came as a result.
Right.
Just tell me where you are right now on that statement.
Well, I never, of course, meant to hurt anybody with what I said. I'm actually
Nobody was
huge,
hurt.
Yeah, nobody was
I
hurt.
think
But
it
here we
takes a
go,
lot
the
of courage
wave
to
of
be yourself,
backlash.
to go out in the world and be honest about who you are. And so I think anyone who is in the LGBT community is a hero and sets
They're
an
all
example
heroes.
for all of us
Yeah,
with that,
yeah.
you know? I think you can, like I said in there, you can call yourself you whoever you
Like
believe
you can,
are.
like
And
you
no
who
one
you're
can
who you believe
dictate
you are.
that
I wonder if a
for you
PR
or
company
take
had
that
anything to
away,
do with this
you know?
response.
I think life is an education process. The more you sit
Yeah.
with people, the more
Oh,
you talk to people.
there you
it
go.
changes your perspective. So
Education.
Brought in
has your
question.
perspective
There you go.
changed, do
We
feel?
we took you back on the
I've learned so
plantation,
much,
and now
I
you're
think,
accepting your place.
She
you know,
said,
being
I
a
learned a
woman is
lot. I
vibe.
learned that I'm
That is
going to
something
lose
I'm
all my
very
deals if I
proud
don't
of.
backtrack
Yeah.
what I
I'm going to
said.
learn to shut up and say exactly what the
In your
left tells me
heart
to
feel
say.
that that's what you are, then that's what you are, regardless of what anybody says or thinks. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
All LGBTQs are heroes.
But yeah, I've learned a lot. Absolutely.
I've learned a lot. I've been re-educated. I've been sent to a 4-day camp somewhere so somebody could re-educate me and tell me what to do, because I'm going to lose money and the media is going to slam me if I don't come out and give an apology. Now, if you look at the first clip and look at how strong she was and, sitting up straight, telling it like it is, now she's fidgeting. She's all over the place. She can't explain anything because she doesn't truly believe it, but she has to say it or she's going to get hammered by the left.
It's that cancel culture. Just like if you don't regurgitate the professors in their class, they'll kill your grade. If you don't regurgitate the pop culture group think, they'll kill your contracts,
That's right.
kill your
And
livelihood.
This interview was proof, okay, that she was re-educated and that the left is re-embracing her. That's what this is. Because if the left was going to flush her down because they didn't think they were going to get to rehabilitate her, they would have been trashing her. But they didn't. She took a few days of heat. She went to some re-education camps, and they're welcoming her back into the fold as long as you understand you learned something.
You're so brave. You're
Yeah,
so
you're brave.
strong. We're so glad you came and saw the light.
You're one of
Yeah.
us.
Yeah, you're one of
Yeah.
us.
Makes me
Seen
want to
that
puke.
before.
Yep. And man, I can tell you what, that happens on a local level more than you think too.
Oh, big time.
We always say that it's just the national level or state level, but look at your local levels and see some of your so-called conservatives that go over to the left Marxist side on how they're loved and they loved having that affirmation. It goes local all the way to federal.
Yeah, we've said for years that local is just a microcosm of federal. Federal, everyone's positions are bigger, the budgets are bigger, but at the end of the day, it's all personalities. And those same personalities, strifes, and conflicts we see on Fox News and CNN are also in your local papers.
Well, even your local rhinos want to be invited to the big galas every year and be part of the clubs and the cocktail circles. So they're going to do and say whatever they want, just like the idiots in D.C. do.
Yep. That's what they're going to do because that's how they learn it. That's what they watch on TV. That's what the chamber and all the rhinos do. So conservatives, once again, time to step up. And then let's go one more story about, here it is, what's a woman, things like that, transgender, transphobic. Now we have the Church of England has no official definition of a woman. And how can you have, and this comes from Analyst News, a tweet by them, how can you have a senior bishop, Dr. Robert Ines, I guess his name is, said the meaning of the word used to be self-evident. It used to be self-evident, but there are now complexities associated with gender identity. So since when did the Bible go from, I guess, self-evident being what the Bible says to now complexity associated with gender identity?
Well, this is the church caving to culture and not, glorifying God and accepting the Bible as the word of God. The church is changing, the Church of England, rather, is changing its beliefs to reflect that of the current society. And this is the same church that just a month ago, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, said that culture, behavior, and standards in public life really matter. We need to be able to trust in our national institutions and, go along with our national institutions. I, for one, am glad that the Church of England is coming down because the Church of England is a government church. It was established to be the church of government, and they were successful in converting the government before from paganism to Christianity, but since then they've just fallen very far.
Now, I'm no Bible scholar, but last I checked that Christians were supposed to be spreading their view of the world to the unchristian world to bring godliness to the unwashed world. But this is, like you said, Nate, exactly opposite of that. It's the world influencing the church to the point where they're even changing something basic, nothing more than they would have to go back to a Greek translation of their Bible to see what a woman is. Because Greek is a very clear language, and trust me, it's very clear in that language. So why is it 2,000 years later there's some confusion?
Well, you can look at, and we're looking at the Church of England right now because it's in the news and we're talking about it, but you can look at any church, whether it's Methodist or Presbyterian, or there's inside movements within churches to do away with kind of biblical principles and move towards a more living document, kind of like they do with the Constitution. And
that's the enemy's presence inside our churches.
And Ines, the same guy we're talking about, the Church of England, they're doing a project, and it's called Living in Love and Faith. Sounds good, right? Living in Love and Faith. And it's a part of a discerning a way forward for the Church of England in relation to matters of identity, sexuality, relationships, and marriage. So that's already pretty much spelled out, if you're a Christian, on what you need to do and what the Bible says about it. So what they're doing is they're moving forward without it looks like.
Well, and it's crazy that the church is moving forward without it, because Genesis is very clear. There was man, and then God pulled his rib and made woman. It should end right there.
And while the Bible doesn't necessarily touch on, the theory of relativity, it does touch upon quite clearly things like sexuality and relationships and right versus wrong. It's a pretty clear set of documents. So there's no ambiguity in the fact that they can't see. There's no ambiguity in the document that established their religion. I think this is more a bellwether at how sick not just that church is, but how sick the American church or how sick the Christian church is nationwide and worldwide.
And, for a lot of people, they say, if you open up Revelations, there's a lot of things like this that could be marking the end of days, and I don't know exactly where I stand on that, but it's not looking good.
No. But what a woman is, you have scientific and biblical truth. I mean, we have it, scientific and biblical truth, and they're moving more towards what's, a so-called today's moralistic, what are the leftist Marxists pushing it towards. And when people start forgetting about the scientific biblical truth, we're in trouble. I mean, just look at Josh Hawley.
Kind of like, I'm big on holding our elected officials accountable for what they do and don't do. And I believe that it's not wrong to call out somebody when they're doing wrong. It's past time for churches inside the panoply of Christianity to not be afraid to stand up and point out if someone's doing wrong and going off the reservation. There is nothing wrong with that. In fact, I would argue the Bible probably would tell you need to do that.
Oh, but John, only God can judge me. And if you say anything wrong with what I'm doing, then you're not a Christian.
Panoply. That's what I want you to comment below what you think panoply, what the definition of panoply is, because John is our resident scholar and he uses really big words. So every now and then when we hear a big word coming out of John, I want you guys to, look down below in the comments, and I want you to define that for everybody else.
But don't use Google, only if you know, or use your best guess.
Here's the deal. Hold on. We want to trust these idiots with giving us information to save our souls from hell, okay? To save us from an eternity of torment. We trust these guys in robes, right? They don't even know what a woman is. So you expect me to trust my eternal soul with you, but you can't even tell me something obvious like what a woman or what a man is. Get out of here.
I don't know if it's as much as you don't know or they don't know what a woman is. They know exactly what a woman is, but they're caving to the leftist Marxists and what they have to act like in society today because there's not enough people that stand up and say, hey, this is total BS. This is crap.
And again, if you don't know enough to point back at that person trying to put pressure on you and say no, again, I'm not going to entrust my soul to you.
That's right.
And this also highlights a big difference between religion and the purpose of religion and the purpose of a relationship with Jesus Christ. There's a lot of people out there that don't put their faith in a religion. They put their faith in Jesus. So, I hope that continues in places like the Church of England, just,
wise up.
Go the way of the London Bridge.
Terrorists seem to like to attack other people on the London Bridge. Did y'all see the picture of the guy who fought off the terrorist with a narwhal tusk on London Bridge? I'll have to send it to you. It's amazing. He fought off a terrorist attack.
With Mr. Narwhal?
With Mr. Narwhal. With a narwhal tusk.
Oh.
It's a big animal.
It's a big whale.
Yeah.
I mean, narwhal?
I thought it was a mammal.
Narwhal?
I guess whales aren't.
Whales are mammals. Whales are mammals.
Hope you find your dad. Mr. Narwhal.